Have you ever noticed that right when you finally decide to change your life, you finally quit that soul-crushing job or you start writing that screenplay you've literally been talking about for 5 years?
Oh, yeah. Or you finally end that really toxic relationship.
Yes, exactly. And then right at that exact moment, your car immediately breaks down, your water heater explodes, and you get this massive, unexplained migraine.
It's uncanny, honestly.
Yeah.
It's almost as if the universe is staging this active, aggressive intervention against your success.
Right. It completely feels like cosmic punishment. And that is exactly what we're unpacking in today's deep dive.
We really are.
Because we're looking at the hidden, often totally invisible blueprint that's running your life and, why your own brain and maybe even the energetic structure of the universe itself actually creates chaos to keep you safely exactly where you are.
Yeah, it's a huge topic.
It really is. We're pulling from an incredible wealth of psychological insights, energetic principles, and honestly, some hilarious real-world anecdotes today to figure out how to stop self-sabotaging.
And it's just such a fascinating intersection of disciplines. Like, we're going to be talking about things like vibrations and energy today.
Which can sound a little out there for some people.
Oh, totally. It can sound a bit mystical or abstract on the surface, but when you look closer, these concepts are deeply, deeply anchored in behavioral psychology, neuroscience, and even quantum perspectives on how human focus literally filters and constructs our reality.
So to start, we really have to figure out who or what is actually driving the bus of your life.
Because most of us walk around believing we're the ones in charge.
Right, we really do. We think our conscious mind is running the show, but the reality of human brain development tells a completely different story, doesn't it?
A vastly different story. Let's break down the mechanics of the mind for a second. The conscious mind, the part of you that resides largely in the prefrontal cortex.
The part making the actual decisions.
Exactly. The part that does math, rationalizes things, worries about what to wear, and decides, hey, it is time to start eating healthier. That part of the brain is a really late bloomer.
How late are we talking?
Well, it doesn't fully come online and mature until we hit puberty. And it actually keeps developing well into our mid-20s.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so it is highly analytical, but it is slow. And it's a relatively new operating system, evolutionarily speaking.
So it's basically the overachiever that shows up late to the group project and tries to take all the credit.
That is a perfect way to put it, actually. Now, you have to compare that to the subconscious mind.
Right.
The subconscious is fundamentally the oldest part of us, both evolutionarily and developmentally. From the moment we are born and even in utero, honestly, it is fully active. It's just gathering data.
But there's a catch there,
A
right?
massive catch. Here is the critical vulnerability. In those early years, up until around age 7, children are operating primarily in theta and alpha brainwave states.
Okay, so what does that actually mean practically for someone listening?
It means the brain is just highly programmable. It is an absolute sponge. The analytical filter of the conscious mind just does not exist
He
yet.
just lets everything in.
Everything. A child's subconscious accepts absolutely everything it observes and experiences as objective, immutable truth. There's no nuance at all.
No filter to say, wait, maybe that's not true.
Exactly. If a parent constantly stresses about bills, the child's subconscious just downloads a permanent file that says money is scarce and causes panic.
Wow.
Or if a child's emotional needs are ignored, the file reads, I am not worthy of attention.
So it's just literal raw programming, whatever the adults around you project. Your hard drive saves it as a fundamental law of physics.
Right.
So we grow up, our conscious mind develops, and we think, I want to be successful, I want to be wealthy, I want to be in a really healthy relationship.
We are consciously stepping on the gas pedal.
Right. But we don't realize the subconscious has the emergency brake pulled all the way up.
Because it's still running on that software from like 1995 that says wealth makes you greedy and relationships equal pain.
And the subconscious is going to win that battle almost every single time, isn't it?
Oh, without a doubt. It processes millions of bits of information per second. The conscious mind processes maybe 40 or 50. The subconscious is a supercomputer running the physiological and emotional responses of your entire body.
There is this wild, perfectly uncomfortable story from our source material that illustrates exactly how deep this programming goes and how it completely overrides all logic.
The bowling story.
Yes. It's about this woman who suffers a terrible back injury. She's bowling, right? And it's a tiebreaker game.
So she's under pressure.
Totally. She is fiercely competitive, completely caught up in the impending victory. She winds up goes for this heroic throw, and just completely doesn't realize she is sliding straight over the foul line.
And anyone who bowls knows the lane beyond the foul line is heavily treated with oil.
Right, it's essentially an ice rink.
Yeah, you have zero traction.
Exactly. So she goes completely airborne and crashes down hard, seriously injuring her back. I mean, it's a brutal injury. Because of it, the nerves in her lower back are getting crushed.
Which causes severe referred pain.
Right. She starts waking up at 3 in the morning every single night with this excruciating, shooting pain in her feet. Her acupuncturist finally tells her, look, your mattress is way too soft. You are aggravating the injury every time you sleep.
So the directive is clear.
Very clear. He says you need to buy a firm mattress immediately if you actually want to heal. So she goes mattress shopping.
Which, should be a completely straightforward, highly motivated, conscious decision. Her conscious mind says, I am in pain, I have the money, I need a mattress.
Exactly. The conscious mind has a crystal clear objective here. So she walks into the mattress store, and she gets the salesman, who is just, well, he's a lot.
A very unique character.
She ends up calling him Freak Show Bob. Unlike the other salespeople who are standing politely at the foot of the beds talking about coil counts and memory foam density.
Normal sales stuff.
Right, normal things. Bud insists on literally lying down on the beds right next to her.
Just making himself entirely comfortable.
Oh, totally comfortable. He is lying on his back, hands behind his head, staring at the ceiling, just chatting away about his weekend like they are at sleepaway camp or something.
That is deeply uncomfortable.
And she is absolutely petrified. She is lying there, stiff as a board, terrified to even roll over to test the firmness of the mattress.
Because she thinks he might try to cuddle.
Yes. She thinks this guy might actually start spooning her in the middle of the showroom floor.
It's an incredibly invasive, completely inappropriate situation. I mean, from a logical standpoint, the solution is glaringly obvious.
You sit up.
You sit up, you say, please give me some space, or you just walk away and ask for a different salesperson.
Right, but she doesn't do any of that. Instead, she waits for a moment when he is distracted. She slides off the bed, sneaks out the front door, and completely blows her only opportunity to buy a mattress that entire week.
It's wild.
It is. She goes home to sleep on the terrible soft mattress and continues to wake up in agonizing pain every night. Why? Because she didn't want to make him feel uncomfortable.
She prioritized the comfort of the deeply inappropriate mattress salesman over her own physical healing.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this is where the behavioral analysis gets so fascinating. Why on earth does she do that?
Well, she traces it directly back to her childhood programming. She grew up in a very traditional, very reserved WASP household.
White Anglo-Saxon Protestant.
Yes, exactly. And her family had a very specific confrontation toolbox, so to speak. And the tools were basically run away, freeze, change the subject to the weather, or just stare blankly.
Anything to avoid actual conflict.
Exactly. Direct confrontation or causing a scene or displaying uncomfortable emotions in public was viewed with absolute horrified disdain. It was just socially unacceptable.
And remember, the subconscious mind equates the family's social rules with basic survival, right?
That's the key. To a young child, being ostracized by the family unit feels literally like a death sentence.
Yeah.
So her subconscious installed a rigid program. Causing a scene or confronting someone directly is a mortal threat. Avoid at all costs.
Wow. And then fast forward decades later, her conscious mind says, I need a mattress to stop my nerve pain.
But her subconscious mind detects the potential for an awkward confrontation with Bob. And it sounds a 5-alarm biological fire drill.
It just takes over.
It floods her system with adrenaline and triggers the freeze-and-flight response.
The survival code completely overrides the physical pain. It's incredible.
But hold on, I want to push back on this a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
If the subconscious is fully formed at birth and it absorbs everything without a filter, and it literally hijacks our nervous system to enforce these outdated rules, I mean, aren't we all just fundamentally doomed to play out our parents' traumas?
It feels like that, doesn't it?
It really does.
How do you outsmart a system that was literally hardwired into your brain before you could even speak?
It's the ultimate human dilemma, for sure. But no, you are not doomed. The key lies in the mechanics of metacognition.
Which is thinking about thinking.
Exactly. Your ability to observe your own thoughts. You cannot outsmart a system until you can step outside of it and observe it running. Imagine you have a dead skunk under your porch.
Okay, gross, but I'm with you.
That dead skunk is your conflicting subconscious belief. Your conscious mind wants the house to smell good, so it buys scented candles, it sets up industrial fans, it sprays air fresheners everywhere.
Right, trying to fix it on the
Those
surface.
are conscious, surface-level solutions. They might mask the smell for a day, but the rot is still there.
You have to actually crawl under the porch, find the rotting carcass of the belief, and drag it out into the light.
Precisely. Radical awareness is the first real step. You have to look at the areas of your life where you are constantly frustrated.
Like if you continually sabotage your finances.
Right. Or you always pick emotionally unavailable partners. Instead of blaming bad luck or other people, you have to ask yourself, what hidden belief is this pattern actually protecting?
Consciously, I want wealth. But subconsciously, do I believe wealthy people are corrupt?
Exactly. Once you identify that conflict, the subconscious belief loses its cloak of invisibility.
Okay.
It moves from an automatic reflex to a conscious choice.
But the moment you make that choice, the moment you actually start crawling under the porch and dragging those old beliefs out, your brain fights back hard.
Oh, it resists with everything it has.
And this brings us to the internal security system that the subconscious employs to keep you right where you are. The defense mechanism of the ego, which the source material brilliantly refers to as the big snooze.
The big snooze is just a brilliantly accurate term because its entire operational mandate is to keep you asleep to your own potential.
Right.
When we talk about the ego here, we aren't talking about arrogance or vanity. In psychological terms, it is the false self. It is the shadow identity constructed entirely out of those childhood survival mechanisms and limiting beliefs.
It is fear-based, it is hyper-reactive, and it requires constant external validation just to feel safe,
And its primary directive is homeostasis.
keeping things exactly the same.
Yes, it wants you to stay squarely inside your comfort zone. And the ego does not care if your comfort zone is objectively miserable, abusive, or totally unfulfilling.
Which is so messed up when you think about it.
It is. But to the ego, familiar misery is always safer than the terrifying unknown of joy or success. The unknown is unpredictable, and to the primitive brain, unpredictable equals danger.
Contrast that with your true self. The true self gets its validation internally, it's proactive, it's rooted in love rather than fear, and it exists fully in the present moment.
Right.
But when that true self finally wakes up and says, you know what, I'm miserable, I'm quitting this job to start a bakery, or I'm leaving this toxic friendship, the big snooze goes into absolute panic.
It perceives that growth not as an improvement, but as an existential threat. The identity it has protected for decades is suddenly being dismantled.
The analogy that really sticks here is comparing the big snooze to an overprotective Italian mother.
I love this analogy.
She loves you, she wants you to be safe, but her version of safety is keeping you locked inside the house where she can keep an eye on you at all times.
See from the world.
Right. You can sit on the plastic-covered sofa and eat pasta forever. But the second you put on a jacket and try to sneak out the door to go to an amazing party, she loses her absolute mind.
She panics.
She will scream, she will fake a heart attack, she will literally hurl her body against the front door to trap you inside.
The cognitive dissonance is immense.
Mm.
You are consciously trying to move forward, but your amygdala, the fear center of the brain, is treating the change like a mortal threat. And what is truly fascinating is how this internal psychological panic can seemingly manifest as external chaos.
Yes. This is exactly what we were talking about at the very beginning of the deep dive. It's not just that you feel anxious inside, it's that the physical world around you suddenly turns into a disaster movie.
It really does.
There's the story of a highly successful record producer. She finally decides, after years of dreaming and planning, to build her ultimate state-of-the-art recording studio.
A massive undertaking.
Huge. She pours her savings, her soul, and months of labor into the soundproofing, the mixing boards, everything. And almost the very minute it is completed, an electrical fault sparks and the entire studio burns completely to the ground.
Devastating. Or consider the entrepreneur in the text who finally walks away from a steady, stifling corporate job to launch his own company.
Oh, this one is crazy.
The very week he takes the leap, his car gets 2 flat tires, his babysitter accidentally crashes into his wife's car, the water main in his kitchen just explodes.
Just one thing after another.
And then right before he is supposed to sign his first massive client, he is literally struck by a city bus.
Literally hit by a bus. When you hear these stories, part of you thinks it has to be fiction. But everyone listening has experienced a version of this.
Absolutely.
When you finally stop smoking or you commit to a major life change, suddenly your computer crashes, you get the flu, and your toxic ex calls you out of nowhere. It's like hacking up toxins during withdrawal. You feel exponentially worse than you did when you were stuck in the bad habit.
That withdrawal analogy is very apt.
But I really have to challenge this here. Look, I get the psychology of self-sabotage, but a water main breaking, getting hit by a bus, is the big snooze literally bending reality to punish us? Or is the idea that things fall apart before they come together just a really comforting excuse for bad luck and poor planning?
It is a vital distinction to make because, no, we aren't suggesting your brain telekinetically blew up the water main.
Right, that would be magic.
However, there are two deeply rooted phenomena occurring here.
Okay.
First, the reticular activating system, or RAS, in your brain is suddenly recalibrating.
Okay, what does that do?
When you are in a state of deep subconscious panic about a major life change, your RAS, which filters what you perceive in the world, becomes hyper-focused on threats and obstacles. You suddenly notice every single thing going wrong, which amplifies the feeling of chaos.
You're primed to see disaster.
Exactly. And you might be rushing, distracted by your anxiety, which leads to poor decisions, like not looking both ways before crossing the street, hence the bus.
Okay, so the internal panic creates external clumsiness or blindness to risk. That makes sense.
It does. But there is a secondary external dynamic at play too, the crab effect. When you step out of your comfort zone, you don't just threaten your own big snooze, you actually threaten the big snooze of everyone around you.
Right, the bucket of crabs.
Imagine a bucket of crabs. If one crab tries to climb out, the others will physically reach up and drag it back down.
There's a perfect example of this in the text. Shirley, who owns a highly successful nail salon.
Oh, poor Shirley.
Before she opened it, she was working a miserable but very secure corporate job. The day she announces she is quitting to pursue her dream, her coworkers corner her at the water cooler, and they don't congratulate her at all.
No, they bombard her with pure anxiety.
They say things like, "Are you insane? You have a mortgage, you have high blood pressure, the economy is terrible right now. What if you go bankrupt?"
They are entirely projecting. Shirley's bravery forces them to confront their own complacency.
Right, if Shirley can take a risk and actually succeed, they no longer have an excuse for staying in a job they hate.
Exactly. So to protect their own ego, their own big snooze, they try to infect her with their fear to keep her in the bucket with them.
So, between your own brain triggering a biological fire drill and your friends and family acting like crabs pulling you down, the friction of breaking old paradigms is massive.
It's immense pressure.
The universe, or your own psychology, is essentially demanding, are you actually committed to this? Are you willing to rewire decades of programming, or are you going to use this flat tire as an excuse to run back to the plastic-covered sofa?
The chaos is a test of resolve. And to survive that gauntlet, you really have to replace the fear-based energy of the ego with a fundamentally different, significantly more powerful operating system.
Which brings us to the underlying mechanics of how reality actually works on an energetic level. And look, the terminology here varies widely depending on who you talk to.
Very wide.
Some call it the universe, some call it God, the vortex, source energy, or even the mother lode. For the sake of this conversation, let's just refer to it as source energy.
The terminology is just a placeholder, really. The foundational concept which bridges ancient philosophy and modern quantum theory is that everything in the universe, at a subatomic level, is simply energy vibrating in specific frequencies.
Literally everything.
Everything. The chair you are sitting on, the sound of my voice, and crucially, your own thoughts and emotional states.
And the rule governing this is the law of attraction. Vibration attracts like vibration. The classic analogy here is a radio dial.
It's the best way to visualize it.
If you want to listen to 105.9 FM slow jams, but your radio dial is stubbornly stuck on 89.9 FM NPR, you are not going to hear the slow jams. It defies the physical laws of radio waves.
Exactly. The signal is broadcasting, it surrounds you constantly, but your receiver is simply tuned to the wrong frequency.
In human terms, if you are chronically vibrating at a low frequency, like if your baseline emotional state is resentment, jealousy, victimhood, or this deep subconscious belief that you are unworthy,
then you physically cannot attract or perceive high-frequency, joyful, abundant opportunities. Your reticular activating system will literally filter them out of your awareness because they do not match your internal setting.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Wallace Wattles, who wrote extensively on this over a century ago, put it perfectly, He said, to think what you want to think is to think the truth, regardless of appearances.
It's a profound statement.
It is. Your thoughts are the architectural blueprint that source energy uses to construct your physical reality.
And often the biggest barrier to tuning into that frequency is our own intellectual arrogance. We roll our eyes at it.
Oh, absolutely. We want to be cool and logical. There's a great story about this resistance. Years ago, this woman was living in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and she and her super cool, cynical East Coast friends would go to this massive Western bar called the Midnight Rodeo.
But not genuinely.
No, they only went ironically. They would stand in the corner, drinking beer, and just mercilessly mocking the people doing country line dancing. They thought the giant belt buckles, the fringe, and the synchronized boot stomping were the most ridiculous things they'd ever seen.
The ego loves to mock what it doesn't understand or what it feels excluded from. It's a defense mechanism.
Right. But week after week, they'd watch these people out there genuinely smiling, sweating, completely in the flow, having the time of their absolute lives. And slowly, the sheer, undeniable joy of it started to crack their cynical armor.
They couldn't resist the high frequency.
Eventually, they caved. They started sneaking off to line dance themselves. Soon, they were completely obsessed, stomping around and loving every second of it.
The great metaphor.
She uses this as a brilliant metaphor for her own eventual embrace of spirituality and the law of attraction. She started out as the ultimate skeptic, standing on the sidelines, rolling her eyes at the quote-unquote self-helpery and the concept of manifesting.
But her life was so miserable, and her desperation finally outweighed her need to look cool.
Exactly. She swallowed her pride, got on the dance floor, energetically speaking, and it completely transformed her reality.
It's the transition from judging the frequency to actually tuning into it. And when you fully tune into it, the results can seem completely illogical to the rational mind.
Which perfectly sets up the story of the bartender and the Tuscan villa. This is wild.
Oh, this is one of my favorites.
This woman is working as a bartender, occasionally writing poetry. She has zero savings, no trust fund, no wealthy spouse, nothing. She goes on a trip to Italy, falls in love with the countryside, and stumbles across this gorgeous Tuscan villa that happens to be for sale.
A villa she objectively, mathematically cannot afford.
Not even close. But instead of saying, wow, that's beautiful, maybe in another life, she walks right up to the owners and says, please take the house off the market. That is my house. I am buying it.
The absolute audacity of that is stunning.
Right. She goes back home, and she tells everyone she bought a villa in Italy. Her friends and family think she has completely lost her grip on reality, but she ignores them. She possesses this unwavering high-frequency belief that the house is already hers. Because she is so locked into that reality, her brain bypasses the panic of, I don't have a mortgage, and instead starts looking for creative solutions.
Her RAS is searching for the how.
Yes. She starts aggressively pre-renting blocks of time in her Italian villa to wealthy clients a full year in advance. She raises the entire purchase price purely through these advanced bookings, and she actually buys the house.
Notice the sequence of operations there, though. It is vital. She did not wait for the bank account to reflect the wealth before she believed she could own the house.
She claimed it first.
She committed to the belief first, which opened the neural pathways to perceive the unconventional how.
But wait, this is where it gets really sticky for a lot of people. The idea that we have to change our thinking before the physical evidence appears. We have to demand the evidence after we cultivate the belief.
Right.
Let's play devil's advocate for a second. If I am currently sitting in a tiny, freezing apartment, eating generic tuna out of a can with the plastic spoon, how is my truth that I am about to, say, accept an Academy Award or ring the bell at the New York Stock Exchange?
It feels like a massive leap.
It feels like clinical delusion. Isn't that just lying to yourself? How does lying to myself help me pay the rent?
It feels like delusion because human logic is obsessed with the how. We want the step-by-step instruction manual before we commit to the destination. But the mechanics of manifestation operate on a completely different axis.
Okay, explain that.
Consider Albert Einstein's perspective. Coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. When you demand to know the exact logistical steps of how your life will change before you allow yourself to believe it can, you severely limit your options.
Because you only know what you already know.
Exactly. You restrict the universe to only the pathways your currently limited conscious mind can perceive.
So you're basically trying to micromanage the universe.
Exactly. Your only job is to lock on to the end goal, the feeling of the reality you desire. By doing that, you shift your frequency. When your frequency shifts, your RAS starts highlighting opportunities, connections, and coincidences that were always there.
But you walked right past them because you were tuned to the frequency of the tuna can?
Precisely. The bartender didn't know the mechanics of pre-renting when she claimed the villa. She just knew the end result. The how revealed itself because she was energetically open to it.
Okay, so if the secret sauce is tuning your frequency, and our default frequency is usually panic or doubt, how do we actually change the dial? Because you can't just forcefully yell at your brain to be happy.
No, brute force does not work on the subconscious at all. The mechanism for tuning the dial is mastering the present moment.
Hmm.
The philosopher Lao Tzu summarized the human emotional spectrum perfectly. If you are depressed, you are living in the past. If you're anxious, you are living in the future. If you are at peace, you are living in the present.
The ego, the big snooze, literally cannot survive in the present tense. It needs you obsessing over the embarrassing thing you said 5 years ago or catastrophizing about a meeting that hasn't even happened yet.
Because in the exact present moment, this very second, you are usually fine. You are breathing, you are sitting in a chair. There is no immediate physical threat. Source energy only exists in the now. Therefore, the present moment is the only place you actually have any power to create reality.
You see this so clearly in animals and children. They are master classes in being present. You can leave your house for 5 minutes to check the mail or leave for 5 days on a business trip, and when you walk back in, your dog loses its mind with equal, unadulterated joy.
They have no concept of past resentment.
None. They don't hold a grudge about yesterday. They are just ecstatic you are here now. Or watch a toddler finger painting. They are fiercely concentrated on smearing blue paint onto the paper. They aren't worrying about whether the art gallery will accept the piece or if the kid next to them has a better technique. They are purely in the flow of creation.
We all possess that ability once. As adults, the most effective tool to recapture that state of presence and quiet the frantic chatter of the conscious mind is meditation.
But meditation is incredibly frustrating for beginners. The internal chatter doesn't just stop. One author describes her brain during meditation as sounding like 2-year-olds fighting over a sippy cup.
It's a very noisy process at first.
Very noisy. There is this painfully relatable story she tells about being in a yoga class stuck in pigeon pose.
Ah, pigeon pose. It is a deep hip opener, profoundly uncomfortable for many people.
Exactly. Your leg is folded underneath you, your entire body weight is pressing down on it. She's lying there on the mat, and her internal monologue is pure chaos. She is silently screaming, begging the instructor to switch poses.
She's in fight or flight.
She is convinced her hip bone is going to snap in half. She is furious at the instructor, who is walking around serenely whispering about enlightenment and breathing into the pain. She just wants to punch him. But then for a split second, she exhales. She surrenders to the pose, and suddenly she feels this wave of profound, euphoric peace.
She drops into the present.
She feels connected to the entire universe. She is floating in source energy.
A true breakthrough.
Yes, but it lasts for exactly 3 seconds. Then her brain kicks right back in. Oh my God, my knee is burning. Why is this guy still talking? I hate yoga.
That rapid oscillation between profound, universal connection and petty physical grievance is the quintessential human experience of meditation. It really highlights how tightly the ego clings to control.
It's like the Hindu parable of the woman who ventures deep into the forest to meditate. Her sole, burning desire is to achieve enlightenment and meet the god Krishna.
A very noble goal.
She finds a spot, sits down, squeezes her eyes shut, and begins chanting and meditating with furious intensity. Hours pass. Suddenly, Krishna himself actually materializes in the forest. He walks right up to her and gently taps her on the shoulder.
The literal manifestation of her exact goal.
Exactly. But she is so rigidly attached to the process of her meditation, her eyes are so tightly shut that she gets incredibly annoyed. She furiously swats her hand at him without looking and yells, "Go away! Can't you see I am busy meditating on Krishna?"
It is a phenomenal illustration of how the ego can co-opt even our spiritual practices.
Yeah.
We become so obsessed with the mechanics of the goal that we actually bat away the miracle when it arrives.
Trying to tame the mind is deceptively exhausting. There is a contest, the Chevy Silverado standoff, where a dealership puts a brand new truck in the parking lot. Whoever can keep their hand physically touching the truck the longest wins it.
It sounds incredibly easy.
It sounds like the easiest thing in the world. You literally just stand there and lean on a car, but after 24 hours, 48 hours, people are hallucinating, crying, their legs are giving out. Meditation is the mental equivalent of the Silverado standoff. Sitting in a silent room thinking of nothing sounds effortless until you actually try to do it for 5 minutes.
It is grueling because we are physiologically addicted to the dopamine hits of distraction. Our brains are wired for constant stimulation.
Which brings up the concept of hidden electricity. The text notes that the opportunities you are desperately looking for exist right now, exactly where you are, just like electricity existed in the air long before Thomas Edison or Nikola Tesla figured out how to harness it into a light bulb.
The potential is always
The
there.
potential is there, your awareness is just lacking. Think about this. Have you ever been physically sitting in a room, maybe at a dinner with your family or in a crucial meeting, but mentally you are 1,000 miles away, having a fake argument in your head with a coworker or panicking over an email?
You are entirely absent from your actual life.
Exactly. But let's be real for a second. If decades of trauma and programming are hardwired into our limbic system, can 5 or 10 minutes of sitting cross-legged and breathing actually do anything? Or is it just a placebo?
It is categorically not a placebo. The neurobiological shifts that occur from consistent meditation are very well documented. When you sit still and focus on your breath, you are not just relaxing. You are actively engaging the parasympathetic nervous system, which acts as a brake on your body's stress response.
So you're slowing things down.
You lower the cortisol pumping through your veins. More importantly, functional MRI scans show that regular meditation actually shrinks the amygdala, the brain's fear center, and thickens the prefrontal cortex, enhancing your ability to regulate emotions.
Wait, so you are literally physically rewiring the hardware of the brain?
Yes, you are physically changing your brain structure. You are dampening the default mode network, which is the network responsible for mind-wandering and self-referential, often negative thoughts.
That's amazing.
Energetically, you are turning down the volume of the Big Snooze's radio station, which clears the static, so you can actually receive downloads, those sudden intuitive flashes of clarity about what step to take next.
The flashes of genius.
Right. And the mechanics don't have to be esoteric. Focus on the breath coming in and out of your nose. Visualize a beam of light, or just repeat a word. The author jokes that you could literally use the word meatloaf as a mantra.
Meatloaf. Really?
Yes, because as long as it stops your brains from spiraling into anxiety, it will work. The crucial takeaway is consistency. Showing up for 5 minutes of imperfect, frustrating meditation is exponentially more powerful than waiting for the perfect Zen conditions.
Okay, so let's say you do the work. You sit down, you use the meatloaf mantra, and you finally quiet the frantic chatter in your head. What happens next?
Well, then you have to face yourself.
Right. When the room gets silent, you are forced to actually look in the mirror. You're forced to look at yourself. And for a staggering number of people, what they see in that mirror is a heavily distorted, deeply negative image.
Sadly, yes.
This brings us to the zoo of self-perception and the absolute necessity of radical self-love. Because it doesn't matter how well you meditate, you cannot manifest a spectacular life if your subconscious inherently believes you are a piece of garbage who doesn't deserve it.
The author refers to human self-perception as a zoo, and it's highly accurate. We bounce violently from cage to cage.
1 minute you're a tiger, the next you're a slug.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So 1 minute we experience a flash of our own brilliance and infinite potential, and the very next minute we are convinced we are total frauds who are seconds away from being exposed and ridiculed by everyone.
And it is vital to remember we weren't born this way. We didn't arrive on Earth hating our thighs or doubting our intelligence. There's a beautiful image of this in the text.
The toddler in the yard.
Yes,
Huh?
a man is watching his 2-year-old son playing in the yard. The toddler sees an empty beer can on the grass and decides to pick it up. He doesn't bend at the waist and strain his lower back like an adult would.
No, he naturally bends his knees.
He keeps his back perfectly straight, drops his center of gravity, and executes a physically flawless Olympic-level squat to grab the can.
We are born into bodies that know how to move perfectly. We know how to breathe deeply from our diaphragms. We instinctively trust our desires.
Exactly. But then we grow up, we get shoved into desks for 8 hours a day, we absorb the neuroses of society, and we actively learn to slouch, to breathe shallowly, and most tragically, to unlove ourselves. We are taught that self-love is arrogant.
And that learned self-rejection is insidious. It infiltrates even the highest levels of success.
It really does. Look at the story of this incredibly brilliant professional speaker. She is captivating, dynamic, and completely commands the stage. She delivers this powerhouse presentation to a massive audience, leaves everyone completely in awe, and walks off the stage to thunderous applause.
A total triumph.
But she comes over, plunks down in a chair next to a friend, sighs heavily, and demands, "Okay, tell me the truth. How incredibly boring was I? Did I totally bomb?"
It is cognitive dissonance at its peak. The external reality is undeniable success, but her internal software is running a script of total inadequacy.
It's the poison of comparison.
Yeah.
When we don't love ourselves, we constantly benchmark our worth against other people's completely different skill sets. Imagine the absurdity of Marilyn Monroe looking at a magazine cover of Kate Moss and deciding, well, clearly my curves are a huge problem. I need to starve myself and completely change my bone structure to be beautiful.
Or Led Zeppelin looking at the legacy of Mozart.
Okay.
They sit around and say, you know, Mozart is a historical genius, and he never used a drummer. John Bonham, you're out. We need to hire a classically trained harpist if we want to be real musicians.
It's laughable because their unique magic is the heavy drums. But we do the exact same thing to our own talents every single day. Trying to keep your self-esteem afloat using external metrics is like trying to push a giant fluffy marshmallow up a steep hill.
Oh, that's a great visual.
You push on the left side to fix a sag, and suddenly the right side bulges out. You get the big promotion at work, so you feel smart, but then you look in the mirror and feel terrible about your weight. So you go on a diet and lose the weight, but then you look at your friend's marriage and feel terrible about your own relationship. It's an unwinnable game of whack-a-mole.
Because external validation is fundamentally unstable. The only stable foundation is internal self-love.
But the prescription for getting there always sounds a bit, wow, cringeworthy. The advice is always to drown yourself in positive affirmations. Look in the mirror and say, I am a powerful, brilliant rock star.
People hate doing that.
Let's be honest. When you are severely depressed or feeling worthless, standing in a bathroom mirror chanting, I am beautiful and rich, feels incredibly stupid. It feels like you are actively lying to yourself.
This is the most common roadblock in shadow work. But we must deconstruct the logic here. When you say an affirmation and your brain rejects it, you assume the affirmation is the lie.
Right, because it doesn't feel true yet.
But you have it backward. The deeply held negative beliefs. I am not enough. I am bad with money. I am unlovable. Those are the actual lies. You are not born with them. They were installed by fallible adults, societal messaging, and early traumas when you lacked the cognitive filter to reject them.
So the negativity is the imported virus.
Precisely. Affirmations feel like lies at first because they trigger immense cognitive dissonance within the ego. But neurologically, repetitive affirmations are a therapeutic tool designed to bypass the amygdala and slowly rewire the neural pathways in the brain.
You're forcing a new groove in the record.
Yes, you're using neuroplasticity to carve a new riverbed in your mind, guiding your subconscious back to the fundamental truth of your inherent worth. And a crucial part of this process is eliminating self-deprecating humor.
Oh, that's a big one. We all use self-deprecation because it's charming. It puts other people at ease, like, oh, don't look at me, I'm a total disaster today.
It seems harmless, but your subconscious does not understand sarcasm or jokes. Every time you make yourself the butt of the joke, you are etching that negative belief deeper into your neural pathways. You are confirming the lie.
Okay, so let's assume you do the grueling work. You stand in the mirror, you rewire the pathways, you start making yourself the punchline, and you finally step into your true power. You start shining.
That's a beautiful moment.
But the second you do that, you're going to walk outside and immediately face the firing squad of other people's opinions. And how you handle that external criticism determines whether you continue to grow or whether you sprint right back to the safety of the big snooze.
This is the exact juncture where most people abandon their dreams. The fear of external judgment is completely paralyzing.
It's terrifying.
But the psychological reality is incredibly liberating once you grasp it. Other people's opinions have absolutely nothing to do with you and everything to do with them.
There is a perfect thought experiment to prove this. Imagine two people sitting next to each other in a movie theater watching the exact same film. The credits roll and the lights come up. Person A is weeping, deeply moved, claiming it's a cinematic masterpiece that completely changed their life.
And person B.
Person B is furious, marches out to the box office, and demands a refund because they thought it was pretentious, boring garbage. It was the exact same audio and visual data projected onto a screen. The movie didn't change.
The reaction was dictated entirely by the pre-existing emotional baggage, the aesthetic preferences, and the unhealed triggers of the individual viewers,
Right, you are the movie. People project their own internal state onto you.
which introduces the heavy psychological concept of mirrors. The idea that the traits that absolutely enrage us in other people are inevitably the exact traits we secretly despise or fear within ourselves.
Projection?
Projection is a well-documented defense mechanism. The ego cannot tolerate looking at its own flaws, so it subconsciously identifies them in others and attacks them there.
Imagine the Wright brothers back in Dayton, Ohio, trying to build an airplane. Picture their neighbors leaning over the picket fence, viciously gossiping about them. Oh, those poor Wright boys, they've lost their minds. It's a disgrace to the family. Humans aren't meant to fly.
They're projecting their own terror of failure and their own limited imaginations onto the brothers.
We project our limitations, but we also project our deeply repressed desires. This is perfectly captured in the story of the road trip to San Diego.
Oh, the macho friend and the girly friend.
Yes, a woman who prides herself on being tough, macho, and one of the guys she plays the bass in a rock band, drinks whiskey, hates anything pink or frilly, gets invited on a weekend getaway by her friend, who is the ultimate, unapologetic girly girl.
And she is dreading it.
She is bracing herself for an agonizing estrogen bomb weekend of getting manicures, talking about feelings, and watching romantic comedies. She's judging her friend harshly for being so superficial.
The ego is building a wall of judgment to protect its identity.
Exactly. But they get to the hotel in San Diego, and within hours, the tough facade completely crumbles. It turns out, beneath the leather jackets and the whiskey, her inner little girl had been starved for attention for decades.
She needed that outlet.
She ends up spending the entire weekend doing face masks, trying on ridiculous outfits, screaming, laughing, and totally losing her voice.
Her initial intense disdain for her friend's girly behavior was not actually about the friend. It was a massive mirror. It was a defense mechanism shielding her own deeply suppressed, unhealed feminine energy. She judged what she secretly craved, but felt unsafe to express.
So what does this all mean? The rule of thumb is, if someone insults you and it's not true, it bounces right off. If someone teases you for being incredibly short, but you are a 6'2" basketball player, you don't even flinch. It's just absurd.
This doesn't trigger anything.
But if someone teases you for being bossy and controlling, and deep down, you secretly fear that you are alienating people with your need for control, you explode. You get defensive, you attack them back.
The intensity of your reaction is the exact measurement of your own internal wound.
But wait, hold on. I have to push back on this mirror concept. Is it really true that every annoying person in the world is just a mirror of my own flaws? What if someone is just objectively a toxic jerk?
That's a fair question.
Right, because if a guy cuts me off in traffic, flips me off, and nearly causes a 10-car pileup, do I seriously have to sit there and psychoanalyze myself? Oh, I must own my inner ugly. He is reflecting my own reckless driving. That sounds like a recipe for becoming a complete doormat.
That is a crucial and very common misinterpretation. We must refine what the mirror actually reflects. The mirror does not mean you are identical to the objective jerk in traffic.
Okay, yeah.
What is being mirrored is your reaction to the jerk. Why does that incident ruin your entire afternoon? Why do you replay it in your head for 3 hours, fantasizing about revenge? That lingering rage, that intense defensiveness that is the mirror.
The reaction is the mirror.
Exactly. Your reaction reveals your own unhealed trigger around feeling disrespected, powerless, or unsafe.
Ugh. So, the guy is a jerk, but my 3-hour rage spiral is entirely my own issue.
Precisely. If you had no unhealed wounds around disrespect, you would simply observe the bad driver, calmly apply your brakes, note that he is driving dangerously, and move on with your day. His toxicity would not latch on to your energy.
You wouldn't invite him into your brain.
Right. The psychological freedom comes from asking a specific question. Who do I need to be for this situation not to bother me? It is about severing your emotional attachment to their bad behavior. It does not mean you excuse them or enable them. Tough love is still love. You can set a fierce boundary, but you do it from a place of peace, not a place of triggered rage.
Okay, so you manage to silence your internal inner critic with self-love, and you learn to deflect the external critics by recognizing they are just projecting. You have cleared the static. You have a completely clean slate. Which brings us to the terrifying question. What on earth are you actually supposed to do with your life? How do you find your calling?
Many people remain completely paralyzed at this stage because they have bought into the myth of the thunderbolt calling.
The sudden epiphany.
We watch movies and read biographies that suggest you are supposed to have one single dramatic epiphany where the heavens open and you realize you were born to be an architect or a surgeon.
But for 99% of humanity, the thunderbolt never strikes. You don't get an epiphany, you just evolve through a messy series of interests, hobbies, and stepping stones. To help bypass this paralysis, there is a brilliant cognitive exercise called Be the Alien.
It is a phenomenal technique for objective self-assessment.
Imagine an alien spacecraft swoops down and beams an alien into your physical body. The alien inherits your life exactly as it is right now, but the alien doesn't have your childhood trauma, it doesn't have your fear of failure, and it doesn't care what your high school friends think.
A completely clean slate.
To the alien, your life is a brand new playground. What specific resources, quirky talents, and physical opportunities would that alien immediately recognize that you have completely taken for granted?
It forces you to inventory your assets without the heavy filter of the ego's excuses. We're often blind to our own advantages because we are just so accustomed to them.
And a major clue in this exercise is looking at your fantasies. The things you daydream about when you are staring out the window. The things you dismiss as silly or impractical. In an excuse-free universe, your fantasies are the blueprint of your reality. They are direct dispatches from your true self.
But the critical component is that you cannot wait for the entire blueprint to make sense before you move. You have to take action in the dark.
The author's own journey is the perfect example of this. She knew she wanted to work for herself, but she had absolutely zero concrete business ideas. Nothing. So she just starts attending this women's entrepreneurial think tank in her city.
Just putting yourself in the environment.
Right. She goes week after week just sitting in a chair watching other women build businesses, waiting for the thunderbolt to strike. It doesn't. Eventually, out of sheer boredom or a desire to be useful, she volunteers to help the woman running the group with some organizational tasks.
A tiny, seemingly insignificant stepping stone.
Exactly. But that single act of volunteering put her in the flow of action. Helping the facilitator led to her eventually leading smaller breakout groups. Leading those groups revealed a natural talent for coaching.
And it snowballed.
That evolved into her starting her own private coaching business, which eventually scaled globally, which led to her writing massively successful books. She didn't have a grand master plan. She just took the very first right step that was in front of her.
And as you take those steps, you must give yourself permission to be entirely authentic, even if it looks ridiculous to the rest of the world. Contrast her corporate journey with the story of Loincloth Man.
Oh man, Loincloth Man. This is the ultimate example of unapologetic living. The author and a friend are hiking deep in the remote wilderness of the Utah desert, miles and miles away from civilization or any roads.
Deep in the middle of nowhere.
Her friend casually mentions that he previously met a guy who was literally living in a cave out there. Suddenly, out of the brush, this guy appears. He is wearing absolutely nothing but a headband and a perfectly tailored, very small Italian leather loincloth.
Wow.
He is carrying a handmade spear, and he is swinging a dead squirrel by its tail like a designer handbag.
A truly jarring image.
Completely surreal. They stop and talk to him, and he is perfectly articulate. He explains that he just found modern society too loud, too complicated, and filled with arbitrary rules, so he decided to move into a cave and hunt his own food.
Now, the underlying psychological lesson here is not that we should all abandon our mortgages, strip down, and move to caves in Utah.
Right. Please don't do that.
The profound observation is his energy. He was living his bizarre, highly unconventional truth with absolute zero apology. He did not care in the slightest what two hikers in expensive Patagonia gear thought of his leather crotch pelter or his dead squirrel. He was entirely free of the mirror.
I love that. He is the ultimate alien inhabiting his own life. But let's ground this back in reality. Say you do the alien exercise, you identify your dream, maybe it's to be a professional musician, but your first right step is moving to a new city and taking a job waiting tables to fund your studio time.
That's a very common reality.
Waiting tables is your current stepping stone. How on earth do you stay vibrating at a high frequency? How do you stay connected to source energy when a customer is screaming directly in your face because their French onion soup is cold? How do you not let the reality of the stepping stone crush the fantasy of the destination?
That is where the rubber meets the road. It requires cultivating radical gratitude in the trenches. The universe is not judging the prestige of your current job. It is responding to the energetic frequency you bring to it.
So you have to be positive even when it's awful.
You must perform your duties at that stepping stone with absolute excellence and gratitude. Why? because the energy you cultivate now is the fuel that will propel you to the destination. If you wait tables with bitter resentment, feeling entitled to be a rock star, you are broadcasting a frequency of lack and anger.
And you get more lack and anger back.
You will attract more lack and anger, and your music will likely reflect that bitterness. If you view that restaurant job as the vital, abundant mechanism funding your dream, you broadcast gratitude. Passion for the ultimate goal must completely eclipse the temporary discomfort or the ego's fear of looking foolish on the stepping stone.
So you have your vision, you are grateful for the stepping stones, and now you have to actually execute the plan. Which brings us to the twin assassins of all human potential: procrastination and overwhelm.
The mechanics of action. Procrastination is incredibly seductive. It provides an immediate, albeit temporary, relief from the anxiety of doing the hard thing.
It feels so good to just put it off.
And as the research notes, it is a highly social disease. You will never lack for friends who are willing to go get a drink with you instead of working on your business plan. It is the most socially acceptable form of self-sabotage.
And the primary excuse we use to procrastinate is time. I just don't have the time to write the book or start the gym routine, but the author aggressively points out that time is largely an illusion, and not having enough time is always a choice.
It's about priorities.
She uses a painfully relatable example. You are running late for an appointment, you see a legal parking spot 3 blocks away, but your ego says, I don't have 5 minutes to walk. So you park illegally in a loading zone right out front. You come out an hour later and your car has been towed.
The cascade of consequences begins.
Suddenly, you have to spend 3 hours taking 3 different buses to the city tow lot. You stand in line for an hour. You spend another hour furiously calling your spouse to complain about the city government. You miraculously found 6 completely open hours in your schedule for crisis and drama, but you couldn't find 5 minutes for a parking spot.
It's amazing how that works.
We make time for what our subconscious prioritizes, even if what it prioritizes is chaos.
Exactly. And the companion to procrastination is overwhelm. We must address the cultural phenomenon of busyness. Walking around saying, I'm so overwhelmed, I'm so busy, has become a bizarre societal status symbol. It is the new I'm fine. It signals importance.
If you aren't stressed, you must not be important. But the antidote to overwhelm is adopting the mantra that done is better than perfect. Perfectionism is just high-end procrastination.
Audacity will consistently outperform hesitant perfectionism.
There is no better example of audacity than the story of the band called Crotch.
A very memorable name.
The author and her coworker, Paula, decided they wanted to be rock stars. The minor issue was that neither of them knew how to play a single instrument, not a chord, but they didn't let a lack of skill stop them. They bought electric guitars, strapped them to their backs, and would literally just walk back and forth past plate glass windows downtown so they could look at the reflections and see how cool they looked.
Cultivating the identity before possessing the skill.
Right. When they actually got on stage, it was pure noise. They just yelled over the feedback and jumped around. But they led with pure, unadulterated audacity. Their entire vibe was, let's see exactly what we can get away with.
And it worked.
And purely on the strength of that chaotic, hyper-confident energy, they ended up getting a demo deal with Columbia Records.
The music industry executives were responding to the frequency of their confidence, not the technical proficiency of their guitar playing.
She pulled a similar move to get a job. She applied to be the production coordinator for this massive ethnic folk arts festival held in a Polish beer garden in Queens, New York. She had 0 event production experience. None.
Talk about a leap of faith.
She completely faked her resume, confidently lied in the interview, and got the job. She went home that night, had a massive panic attack realizing what she had done, and then woke up the next day and worked harder than she'd ever worked in her entire life.
She had to back it up.
She wrangled 27 of her unemployed friends to manage traditional polka dancers and bagpipe parades, paying them exclusively in free Polish sausage and beer, and the festival was a massive success.
It is the classic entrepreneurial leap. Jumping off the cliff and furiously assembling the airplane on the way down.
You hear a story like that, and part of you thinks, wait, she just completely faked her way into that. Isn't it unethical to lie your way into a job? But it's not really about the deception, is it? It's about overcoming the paralysis of feeling unqualified.
Precisely. When we analyze the psychology of the phrase, I am unqualified, 90% of the time, It is simply a socially acceptable, logical-sounding translation for "I am terrified of failing."
The fear is masking itself as logic.
The author's willingness to work relentlessly validated her initial audacity. She didn't just lie and coast, she used the pressure of the lie to force herself to rise to the occasion.
We trap ourselves. There is a brilliant metaphor about a bird trapped in a living room. The bird is panicked, flying frantically around the room, repeatedly slamming its beak into a closed glass window, staring at the sky outside.
A sad but common sight.
It is exhausting itself, bleeding, trying to force its way through an invisible barrier. Meanwhile, just 3 feet to the left, the homeowner has wedged the massive sliding glass door completely open.
The bird is so hyper-focused on the obstacle, so blinded by its own panic, that it cannot perceive the effortless exit right next to it. We do this constantly with our goals. We exhaust ourselves banging against perceived limitations.
So practically speaking, if someone listening right now is trapped in the procrastination cycle, how do they break the glass? How do they force themselves to take action?
You have to raise the stakes.
The book proposes the ultimate nuclear anti-procrastination bet. You write a check for $1,000 or whatever amount of money would genuinely cause you physical pain to lose. You make the check out to an organization or a political cause that you actively, fiercely despise.
That's brutal.
And you give that check to a ruthless, highly reliable friend. If you do not launch the website or finish the chapter or make the scary phone calls by Friday at 5 p.m., they mail the check.
It is an extreme but highly effective manipulation of the brain's risk-reward circuitry. You are artificially raising the stakes so high that the pain of procrastinating finally outweighs the fear of doing the work.
It forces your hand.
Furthermore, to manage the overwhelm, the concept of chunking is neurologically vital. When you look at a massive project like writing a book, your amygdala perceives the enormity of it as a threat and triggers paralysis.
Because it's just too big.
By breaking the task into strict, non-negotiable 60-minute blocks like, "I will only write for 1 hour," you bypass the amygdala's panic response. And crucially, you must delegate.
Oh, letting go of control.
The belief that I have to do it all myself because no one else can do it right is not a badge of honor. It is an arrogant, control-freak manifestation of the ego that will severely stunt your growth. You must release control to scale your life.
Okay, so you're taking massive action. You're delegating. You have bypassed the panic. But to sustain this over years, you need high-octane fuel, and you need a way to constantly flesh out the emotional toxic waste that accumulates along the journey.
You need a maintenance program.
Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
The gateway drugs to awesomeness. Gratitude, giving, and forgiveness.
These 3 practices are not just moral platitudes. They are the required energetic maintenance program for an extraordinary reality. Let's start with gratitude.
Okay.
When you are grateful, you instantly shift your frequency out of fear and into abundance. But the text emphasizes a highly specific advanced application of this, expressing gratitude for things before they've physically manifested.
Like the author's trick for finding parking in crowded cities. She doesn't drive around stressed, gripping the steering wheel, hoping she gets lucky. As she turns onto the street, she genuinely, verbally expresses deep gratitude for the perfect parking spot that she believes is already waiting for her.
She aligns her frequency with the outcome.
She feels the relief before she sees the spot. It is the ultimate demonstration of energetic faith.
And giving operates on the exact same physiological and energetic mechanics. Giving is an act of fearlessness. Every single time you give money, time, or resources, you are physically proving to your subconscious mind that you firmly believe you live in an abundant, infinite universe where there is always more to go around.
You counteract the ego's narrative of scarcity.
Precisely.
And we are naturally wired for this. There's a beautiful story about the pure joy of giving before the ego corrupts it. The author is at a convenience store with her family, and they let her 5-year-old niece buy a 6-pack of orange Tic Tacs.
A big treat for a 5-year-old.
They get out to the car, and the adults decide to test her. They ask the little girl for some candy, fully expecting her to clutch the plastic boxes and throw a greedy toddler tantrum. Instead, she happily rips the package open. She hands 1 box to the author, 1 to her dad, 1 to her mom, and then carefully assigns the remaining boxes to her siblings waiting at home. She sits there in her car seat with absolutely 0 Tic Tacs left for herself, and she is positively beaming with joy.
She hasn't yet learned the fear of not having enough. The act of giving generated more internal joy than the sugar would have.
And then there is the practice of maintaining that high-frequency state when you were surrounded by absolute chaos. There is this epic story of an Indian bus ride.
Oh, the Super Deluxe Express.
The author is in India, and she pays extra for a ticket on the 5-hour Super Deluxe Express bus from one city to Delhi. It is supposed to be fast and air-conditioned. Instead, it turns into a bizarre, endless odyssey.
A true test of surrendering expectations.
Right. She is crammed into a seat next to a guy who is loudly yelling in Hindi the entire time. The bus keeps getting trapped in these massive, explosive, hours-long Indian street wedding parades.
So they are barely moving.
But instead of the passengers screaming at the driver, they just casually get off the bus and join the wedding parties. They dance for an hour, get back on, and keep going. Then, out of nowhere, a holy man boards the moving bus. A few hours later, he makes the driver pull over at a random village called Vrindavan. The entire bus, dozens of passengers, just unloads and spends 2 hours touring ancient temples with this holy man.
Just completely detouring from the itinerary.
The author has this sudden realization. If this were a bus full of stressed-out New Yorkers trying to get to a meeting, there would have been a violent mutiny. But these passengers completely embraced the chaos. They recognized they couldn't control the flow of the river, so they just floated with it. As the text memorably puts it, you have to loosen your bone, Wilma.
It is the ultimate display of energetic flexibility. When you rigidly attach to your expectations, any deviation causes immense suffering. When you loosen your grip, the detour becomes the adventure, which perfectly bridges us to the final and unequivocally the most difficult gateway drug of all, forgiveness.
This is where the work gets incredibly heavy. The psychological analogy used here is the empty boat. Imagine you are sitting in a small boat on a misty lake, enjoying the peace. Suddenly, another boat drifts out of the fog and smashes hard into the side of your boat, heavily scratching the paint. If you look over and see that the boat is completely empty, it just slipped its moorings and drifted on the wind, you might be annoyed, but you just grab an oar, push the empty boat away, and assess the damage.
The physical event occurred, but there is no narrative of malice attached to it.
Exactly. But imagine the exact same physical event happens. The boat smashes yours, same scratch on the paint, but you look over and there is a guy sitting in the other boat and he hit you because he was looking down at his phone.
Now it's personal.
Instantly, your blood pressure spikes, your face gets hot, and you erupt into a screaming fit of absolute venomous rage. The physical reality of the scratched paint is identical in both scenarios. The only thing that changed was your reaction, because in the second scenario, you had a target for your blame.
The core paradigm-shifting information here is that forgiveness is fundamentally misunderstood in our culture. Forgiveness is not about letting the other person off the hook. It is entirely about letting yourself off the hook.
I connect so viscerally to this. The old saying is so true. Holding on to deep resentment is literally like drinking rat poison every single day and waiting for the rat to die. It destroys your own biology.
It really does.
But look, I have to pose a genuinely difficult question here for everyone listening. It is easy to forgive a guy in a boat for scratching your paint. It is relatively easy to forgive a clumsy coworker, but how do you actually practically forgive someone who profoundly betrayed you?
The deep wounds.
Someone who abused you or ruined your life, especially if they are completely unrepentant and will never, ever apologize. How is forgiveness not just victim blaming yourself?
It is the hardest psychological and spiritual work a human being will ever do. But we must anchor this in the profound quote from comedian Lily Tomlin. Forgiveness means giving up all hope for a better past.
Wow. Giving up hope for a better past.
Right? You cannot rewrite the history. The trauma happened. But right now, in the present moment, your lack of forgiveness is tying your precious life force energy to the person who harmed you. The psychological exercise suggested for these extreme cases is to completely strip away the monster you see them as.
Okay, and replace it with what?
Attempt to view your abuser as a terrified, deeply flawed, perhaps abused child who is acting blindly out of their own severe suffering and broken conditioning.
You see them as an empty boat driven by trauma.
Precisely. And this is critical. This perspective does absolutely nothing to excuse their horrendous behavior. It does not validate their actions. It does not mean you have to call them. And it certainly does not mean you ever invite them back into your life or sit at a dinner table with them.
So what does it do?
What this internal shift does is sever the energetic umbilical cord, attaching your current emotional state to their past toxicity. It stops them from living rent-free in your mind. By actively releasing the demand for an apology you will never receive, you reclaim massive amounts of cognitive and energetic real estate. You take your power back, allowing you to focus entirely on building your own awesome reality.
That is incredibly heavy, but so profoundly liberating, severing the attachment to the past so you can actually live in the present. Well, looking back at the sweeping, massive journey of this deep dive, we have covered a staggering amount of terrain today.
We really have.
We started by diagnosing the murky, filterless waters of our subconscious childhood blueprint. We learned how to identify the dead skunks under the porch. We figured out how to battle the big snooze and understand why our brains manufacture chaos to keep us safe.
We covered the frequencies of reality.
We explored the actual energetic frequencies of reality, the neurological necessity of meditation, and the vital armor of radical self-love. We talked about dodging the opinion-firing squad, finding your calling by looking at your life like an alien, defeating procrastination with sheer audacity, and fueling the entire machine with gratitude, giving, and the heavy lifting of forgiveness.
If I were to offer one final synthesis of all these profound concepts, it really boils down to the absolute power of conscious choice. You are not a helpless victim of your early childhood programming, you are not trapped by your current physical circumstances, and you are certainly not defined by the projected opinions of others.
You have agency.
In every single moment, you possess the agency to choose. Will you operate from the deeply ingrained fear of the big snooze, or will you do the uncomfortable work to align with source energy and act boldly from your true self? Your reality is nothing more than a delayed mirror of that ongoing daily choice.
Which brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with today. Something for you to mull over as you go about your week. We talked extensively today about how annoying or toxic people are, often mirrors, reflecting your own unhealed triggers and hidden traits back at you.
Yes.
But consider the incredible flip side of that equation. You are also walking around serving as a mirror for every single person you meet.
That's very true.
Based on your energy, your words, and how you are showing up in the world right now, what exactly are you reflecting back to the people around you? Are you reflecting their anxieties, validating their limitations, and enabling their excuses?
Or are you doing the opposite?
Exactly. Or by fiercely owning your own life, are you reflecting their infinite potential and giving them permission to finally see their own greatness?
That is a phenomenal question to sit with.
Remember how we started this deep dive, talking about the universe throwing obstacles in your path and the muddy waters of the human mind. Well, maybe the ultimate goal isn't to fix everything perfectly so you can stare endlessly at the broken pieces of your past. Maybe the goal is to realize that you are the one generating the light. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.